Hi everyone, Liam here. We've recently been asked by a client to paint up some Eldar, and I thought it would be really useful to show you how I painted the lightning effect on the blades. The paints we're using on this one are Vallejo Model Color Blue Green, Vallejo Model Color Dark Prussian Blue, and Vallejo Model Color White. Here we go. First up, the blade is going to be base coated in Vallejo Model Color Blue Green. The first part of this video is going to be using an airbrush, but I appreciate not everyone has an airbrush. Feel free to click on the link in the description below or on the video right now, and it will take you through to another video which will show you how to do this with a paintbrush. You do not need an airbrush. The first stage is we want to get a basic crystal effect for the blade. The blade is base coated in Vallejo Model Color Blue Green, and then we're getting Vallejo Model Color Dark Prussian Blue through the airbrush or the paintbrush, and we're creating an alternating pattern between the two, as you can see on screen. Once this happens, we need to make it pop a little bit more. 50% white, 50% Vallejo Model Color Blue Green. We're going to push the bright sections of this blade even brighter to make it pop, like you can see. Try to hold the airbrush parallel to the blade so it only catches one side. Again, I'll go over this in the other video, but it's something to bear in mind. Now, we're going to move on to the brushwork itself, and the consistency and how we load the brush is incredibly important to get this result. The paint that you can see on screen at the moment is the Vallejo Model Color Blue Green. Vallejo Model Color is a really thick opaque paint, and we need to break the surface tension of the paint. So the idea with this is we just need to add enough water to get a nice layer, and then you can see the brush is loaded halfway up. So I've half loaded the brush, and then we remove the excess on a piece of kitchen roll. What we're looking for is a fairly opaque brush mark with no tears. What I mean by no tears is we should be able to do a continuous brush mark for about 1 centimeter long without that paint breaking. The brush stroke that we're going to use for the actual lightning itself is a series of very small dots. So it's like we're dabbing the actual paint on to the model. And the reason for this is we want a little bit more of a broken line. You can do a straight line, nice full brush stroke, but what will happen is you'll get a little bit more of a cartoony result. So we'll go over that again. The brush is half loaded up the bristles. Remove the excess on the kitchen roll and twist it as you go. And then when we paint these lines on, we're doing a series of dots. So we're dragging the brush and dotting it at the same time. As for going brighter, all we're going to do is we're going to add white. So we're going to add more and more white as we go to go brighter and brighter. The reason why I'm not using a pre-mixed bought paint is because generally I tend to find the bluey greys that we buy tend to be a little bit desaturated. So if we've got a nice blue and I add white to it, I generally get a little bit more of a vibrant result. But if you want to use like a pre-bought sky blue or anything like that, by all means go for it. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just a preference on my part. Now the lightning pattern itself is relatively straightforward. What we're going to do is you're just going to do a series of squiggly lines with that dot in motion along the length of the blade. Don't do them too long, because if you do them too long, it will split the blade in half and it starts looking quite unnatural. So you want them relatively short. And if for whatever reason the paint stops coming off your brush, you can see here, I'm applying the paint and nothing is coming off. The reason for this is the paint is drying and it's not working anymore. If this happens to you, you need to clean the brush, thin your paint and start again. We have a specific working time with this paint because there's not a lot on the brush. And as soon as you start painting it on and it stops coming off the paintbrush and going on the model, you need to stop, clean your paintbrush off and basically get fresh paint on. Don't try and force it. If that paint's not coming off easily, do not force it because all you're going to do is make a mess. Once you've done one side, do the other. Now you can see I only did the dark area before. That's because as soon as we go into the brighter area with the deep blue white mix that I had, it's not going to show up because the highlight area is even brighter than the color that I had on my paintbrush. So this is where we add a little bit more white, go a little bit brighter, and we now work into the brighter area. So this gives us the gradient to our lightning. So the lightning is bright in the dark area, but it's not. The lightning in the dark area is not as bright as the light area. The reason why this is important is because it retains that alternating color value that we have from the crystal blade. So where it goes light, dark, if you use the same value of color for the lightning across the whole blade, you're going to lose that alternation. And it's really, really interesting when we want to keep it. So we have two different values, two different brightnesses for this lightning. The next thing that we need to do, remember the most important thing when it comes to miniature painting is readability, strong separation of shapes. So we're going to place in the edge highlights. Same mix as the lightning. We're keeping it all the same, really straightforward, with these nice, crisp, clean lines. Now, if you are still hanging around, hopefully that means that this video is helpful and you're enjoying it. If you are, please hit the subscribe button. It means a massive amount to us and it really helps with the growth of the channel. And if you do feel like supporting a little bit more, feel free to check out the members area for even more video content. Now, with the edge highlights on this, the outside of the blade, because it's so big, is really nice and simple in the scheme of things. It's not particularly challenging. The runes themselves are a different animal. In this case, the client didn't give me a brief on what he wanted doing with the runes, so I decided for the time being to edge highlight them. This is actually incredibly difficult because of how small they are, but we have to have some kind of definition to the shape so they stand out and we can understand what's going on. But as this is so difficult, my recommendation would actually be to get some white ink and to drop that white ink into the recess of the runes. The ink will do all of the work and flow into the recesses. It will give you that nice pop to the shape. That would be the easier option. We're going to do a second edge highlight on this. Towards the tip of the blade and towards the lower half of the blade, we're going to push even brighter with the edge highlight. So we're adding just a little bit more white to that blue-green. Again, when we talk about value range, we're talking about how dark we go and how light we go. So on the flat of the blade, we have this really nice strong value contrast where it goes dark blue to light blue. We want the same thing to happen on the edges of the blade themselves. Remember, readability is so massively important. We want the outline of these shapes to really, really pop. So in this case, as I said, I've just pushed brighter on the edges. I'm not covering every part of the edge. I'm leaving some of the previous edge highlight in place, but generally towards the peak of areas, I'm pushing that edge highlight. Next up, what we're going to do is we're going to soften out the marks on the blade. I'm getting the Vallejo model color blue green, and I'm thinning it down to probably 10 parts water to 1 part paint. This is incredibly thin glaze. I'm absorbing 99% off of the brush onto the kitchen roll. So I have very little paint on my brush. The paint is incredibly thin. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the brush over this blade going towards the dark areas. Now you can do this if you want to, but the reason why we do it is very simply because those brush marks can be a little bit rough. It's very hard to get them perfect. This softens out those brush marks and turns them a little bit more blue. And this is the blade finished. Naturally, I've still got the warlocks and the farseer to do. I'll have a video for those coming soon, so make sure you hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications. That way you'll know when it goes live. I want to say a big thank you to all of my patrons and all of our members. It means a huge, huge amount to us. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thank you for all your support.